today's is going to be, how often should I throw? This is actually a question that I don't even answer these days because of it being just so loaded. There's so many variables. Obviously, for me, it's easy to just say, well, it varies per individual, right? Everyone's going to be different. I think that's something that everyone knows, but something that everyone doesn't really want to hear, right? So today I want to take time and elaborate on why it's different and why there's so many variables, and really kind of just hammer home. But again, the only thing that I can really speak to is, me, right? Like my personal experience, not only in the playing field, but on the instruction side too, and just kind of seeing what works for other people and the commonalities of everything that goes into it. So, so we'll jump right into it. I'm just appalled at like this Airbnb still. This is like, anyways, never mind. So before we jump in, actually, sponsoring this FAQ episode, Frost Gear Baseball. Where is it? There, Frost Gear. Robby 10 at checkout, save you 10% on anything you want to purchase. They sent me batting gloves, a throwing glove that I'm still yet to do a product review on, and this dope beanie. So for those of you guys who grinding in cold areas, especially during this time, I'm in Omaha right now visiting Dr. Heenan, and it's snow on the ground, and this thing is a lifesaver. But they got all kinds of stuff, so check them out. I'll include the link to their website on the landing page. So if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to head over to the link in the caption, or what do they call it, description, and you'll see that. So how often should I throw? Like I said, loaded question, but doesn't mean we can't really dive into it. So first and foremost, all I know is what I've, in my career, what has worked best for me. And it's funny because I think the one thing that I do talk about a lot is how, I've always been a guy that the more that I threw, and essentially the more that I did, the better I felt, the better I recovered, and whatever. And I've always kind of believed in this essentially like idea that the human body is just completely like just so adaptable. Like our bodies are so incredible, and I know myself included take it for granted. But what I mean by just being adaptable in the sense of load, and essentially the more we give the body, right? So the more volume, the more stress or whatever, the body's going to find a way to adapt and then be able to give back, better resistance or resiliency. I think resiliency was the word that I wanted to use. This is something that, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, in this study, this was proven, blah, blah, blah. And there's no absolutes. I know this for, again, speaking from personal experience in my career and speaking to other people. I've been in contact with Alan Jaeger, I think, a pioneer in the baseball industry. And this is something that him and I go back and forth on all the time. It's like we both believe that. And I think it's dangerous because we do live in this society, or in this baseball culture today. It's really like, really hands-on in the sense of, hey, don't throw over 75 pitches, and when you do throw over 75 pitches, make sure you don't throw a baseball for 3 days, and when you do this, make sure you don't. There's so much, like we're trying so hard to avoid this Tommy John epidemic and all these surgeries, which is great. Obviously we should want to avoid being hurt, but I think at that same time it's like a double-edged sword, because we're essentially training our bodies to not be like a horse, not to be adaptive. The stress and the load that we're giving it is so managed that for me personally, the adaptation phase is very minimal. So like I said, I want to specify over and over again that this is personal experience, talking to people. This is not absolutes. With that being said, I want to hammer home on the topic that it is your responsibility as a thrower, as an athlete, to self-identify. And what I mean by that is you need to identify what allows your arm and your body to feel the absolute best. right? Like that's your responsibility. That's not a coach. It's not an instructor. That's not your mom. That's not your dad, not your brother. That is you. You need to identify, okay, when I do this, that, and this, and this, and that, when I insert these protocols into place during my week, I feel pretty dang good when I throw. Okay, write it down. That's your routine. Go out and perform. Now, you need to also identify the fact that like, okay, when do I not feel good, right? So you could 100% be a guy, and I've met these types of individuals along my journey, where you could be the guy that, you know, doesn't pick up the ball after an outing, is very, very low key in the sense of, you know, doesn't throw bullpens, like doesn't long toss, all of these things that I encourage people to do. But you could be a guy that does exceptionally well with those type of protocols, and that's completely fine. You know, the problem is when you don't self-identify what type of individual or what type of thrower you are, and then you kind of just guess, right? Guess like, okay, I got 2 days before my start, so I guess I'll do some bands here, and I'll do some scat pull downs here, I'll do this and that, and then go out there and see how it feels. That is one piece of encouragement that I will always tell guys. I don't care how old you are. It's not something that you have to overcomplicate. It's just being mindful, right? Like carry this like a journal around during your season and just play around with things, right? Like play around with, okay, I got 7 days this week. I'm starting on Friday, okay? It's Saturday. So I'm gonna go Saturday, this thing, Sunday, I'm gonna do this, Monday, I'm gonna do this. You know, it always comes down to like the goal of the athlete. So if the goal of the athlete is to be the very best possible pitcher or athlete that you can be, then it's like, these are the types of things that we need to start taking into consideration. You know, we need to start being intentional. That's just, you know, that's the truth. You know, now if you're somebody that doesn't really want to be that, or your aspiring goals aren't, you know, to be a college baseball player or to be, you know, a big league baseball player, like that's fine. You know, you don't need to be as intentional as like what I'm talking about here. But yeah, if you take one thing from this entire FAQ, it's just, you know, identify you and be sure that you're 100% certain that this is it. Now, that's not to say that, you know, you have a certain protocol in place that you felt good with for X amount of months and then all of a sudden you stop feeling good. That's not to say like, you know, those protocols are wrong, but maybe, you know, you just tinker like little bits and pieces. And, you know, something that I've done throughout my career, and, you know, again, I had a dad that played in the big league. So, I mean, I had a really, really solid like routine my senior year of high school. Like I was like to a T what I was doing at what time and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm a big routine guy. I always encourage routines, but again, self-identify, because at that same time, you could also be an individual that doesn't do well with routines, right? That like just, you know, gets anxiety or gets anxious and you know, does really poorly when trying to be structured, right? So maybe that's something that you need to look at and be like, okay, well, I know for a fact that I don't do well with routines and I don't do well with this structure. So now maybe I need to switch it up and I need to just be like, whatever, like, here we go, we're going into it. I've met guys like that, dude, that keep it just completely simple, super simple, and you're just like, what? And then he goes out and shoves ish for, you know, 2 weeks straight, and you're just like, this doesn't make sense. But again, that goes back to the identification process, right? Like, you know, these are all different types of individuals, and they all have different types of things that work for them. So what are you doing to find out what works for you, right? So that's another thing about being intentional. So, you know, it's funny because when I look at my career, the 2 times that I've had surgery are probably 2 points in my career where I've actually thrown the least. And again, the best times in my career where I've felt the best have been the highest amount of throwing volume. So I can't say that's an absolute, but again, man, I'm just going off like this personal experience, and I'm just kind of providing that for you. With that same breath, I still, you know, will say I've seen guys that don't throw a whole lot, that cap their throwing program at 120, and their volume's super low, and they go out and they do really, really well for a whole season. So going into a different kind of, or a segue into a different type of topic within the realm of, you know, how often should I throw, you have to understand that the other variables that go into this are, do you have efficient throwing mechanics, and do you have a solid foundation, solid base, right? So the throwing mechanics thing, that could be something that, you need to get screened by an instructor or work with me. I'll include those options on the landing page. But, we always look for optimal throwing mechanics, because I think at the end of the day, if you're throwing inefficiently, you're fighting an uphill battle, right? Like that, just because of your inefficiencies and your deficiencies when you throw a baseball, you're probably not going to be able to handle the same amount of stress as someone that has biomechanically efficient, throwing mechanics. So take that into consideration as well, because that's a huge piece of this puzzle. The foundation point is like, your training, right? Like you need to be sure that not only your arm is in shape, but your body is able to handle the load that you're giving it. Because when you do throw a baseball, you're not just using this, right? That popped. You're also using this whole thing, and this whole thing can break down really quick. And then when this thing breaks down, when your body breaks down, your arm takes on way more stress than it should be, and that it needs to be, and that it's capable of taking on. So take that into consideration as well. So another piece probably the last piece that I'll touch on as far as like how often should you throw is, what is your warm up and your cool down and your recovery, all of those protocols look like. Because not only is your warm up great for that specific day and feeling good for that day when you go out and throw, but a really good warm up will prep you for like your whole entire week, man. It'll prep you for that whole week, and it'll prep you for also your recovery, moving forward. So, be mindful of how you're warming up, how you're preparing your body, how you're cooling down your body, how you're recovering. What are you eating? Like there's so many things that go into it. And I know if you're like a 13-year-old kid, because trust me, when I was 13, I wasn't like thinking about all this, dude. I was a kid. I know it can be like overwhelming, but again, my whole goal for doing these FAQs, having the website, having the social media presence, is to take what I've learned, what I've accumulated throughout my journey, and just give it to you guys, and have you guys handle that whichever way you see fit, in the sense of, if it's too much for you and it's overwhelming, like just push it to the side. But if it's something that you can take and be like, okay, that makes sense, I'm going to apply it to myself, here it is, boom, and then we run with it. That's great. That's my goal. So remember, how often should you throw is going to look differently for everybody. Self-identification process is going to be the first and foremost thing that you need to do for yourself. Identify when you're feeling at your best and when you're feeling at your worst, and take that into consideration, man. That's be mindful of that. Be intentional with that. What was the next thing I said? I totally forgot. So the protocols that you set in place, and then do you have optimal throwing mechanics? Are you biomechanically efficient? Are you using your entire body to throw a baseball? Or are you just using your entire arm? Are you a guy that's coming down a front foot strike and you're late, so then your arm is taking more stress? Are you a guy that comes down a front foot strike and you're too early, so your arm takes up too much stress? There's those little intricacies of the pitching delivery that we can look at to kind of determine, okay, your arm's probably going to be taking up more stress than the next guy that actually has efficient throwing mechanics. So that's something that for you to look at. And then, how are you preparing? How are you warming up? How are you cooling down? How are you recovering? What are you doing for all that? What is your weekly routine like? Be mindful of all of these things. And then at the end of the day, then you can determine for yourself, how often should you throw? Again, me personally, I am a guy that the more that I've thrown efficiently, and the better I've gone about my progression with throwing and long tossing, pull downs, recovery days, all of those things, the better I have felt than, the times in my career where the organization or the team says, hey, it's August, let's hit the brakes, and then I don't throw as much. That's when I've gotten hurt. That's when I haven't felt good, because a lot of people want to do that to you. A lot of people will want to say, hey, push the brakes. There's a completely different aspect with throwing when it comes to like distance, time, or distance plus like exertion level. See, I think everyone's so quick to look at distance and be like, whoa, dude, you're at 150 and you just threw 12 innings yesterday. Well, yeah, dude, but my exertion level's 10%, right? Compared to like, for me, I told a kid yesterday, and he was like baffled. He was like, how often do you long toss? I said, I technically long toss every time I touch a baseball, because everyone looks at long toss past 120 feet nowadays. So I'm going to long toss every time I touch a baseball, but my exertion level is going to vary. That was like me coming back from surgery. I'll include a link to the podcast that Alan Jaeger and Dr. Heenan and I did all together. And we were talking a lot about me coming back from surgery and how we didn't look at distance. We looked at exertion level, because I'm a guy that I can throw 300 feet with, essentially not thinking anything about my arm. So that's going to be different for a guy that when he throws 300 feet, he's having to freaking crank this thing, extremely. So hopefully, you took something from that, because, this whole, how often should you throw FAQ type things, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy them, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, well, I didn't get an answer. The answers are within you, not me, man. So I'll do more of these. Email me if you want me to do a specific, question that you want me to hammer. So, as always, appreciate you guys. Hope you took something from this. And what else do I got? Frost Gear Baseball, Robby 10 at checkout, get you a discount. Included that. Show notes for this specific episode if you're coming from YouTube. I might throw this on the podcast, not sure yet. But therobbyrowshow.com/FAQ3. All right, guys. Your boy's out. Until next time, beard bun, you're welcome. Peace.